I will be preaching from our Jeremiah lesson. That's Jeremiah chapters 18 and 31. Before we get fully into the sermon, there's a little bit of vocabulary work we have to do. I know, everybody loves a vocab test, right? The first word is a word we don't usually use so much in our world: covenant. It's a big word. The Oxford English Dictionary for New English speakers defines it as a promise to somebody, or a legal agreement, or especially an agreement to pay somebody some money, or an especially solemn vow. The second word is a Hebrew word. Repeat after me: karath. All right, you guys can do better than that. Repeat after me: karath. There we go. Got to wake you all up. Karath is the word that gets translated in chapter 31, I will make a new covenant. Isn't it great that Hebrew has a word for I will make a covenant? But if you actually go into the dictionary, you will find that karath is defined as follows: to cease, to cut, to be cut off, to cut down, to destroy, to fail, to perish, and then finally to make, and to make a covenant. If you get nothing else from this sermon, please get this: that God promises some creative destruction. God promises some creative destruction. And that between these two words, between covenant, a promise that God makes unconditionally to us, an especially solemn vow, and the word karath, which means both destruction and covenant, between these two words we find God's promise to make something new in our own life. Our reading picks up in Jeremiah in our journey through the narrative lectionary. Jeremiah arrives on the scene in chapter 1 as a very young man, probably a teenager. And the word of the Lord comes to him and says, Jeremiah, you need to go preach an especially unhappy message. To tell Judah that the Babylonians are coming and that the Babylonians will conquer the kingdom, and unless Judah changes its way, this is what is going to happen. Now, every prophet in the Old Testament tries to get out of their job by saying no. Jeremiah's excuse is one I'm particularly sympathetic to. Jeremiah goes, "Oh Lord, I'm too young." I was 27 when I started pastoring, so I understood this complaint, right? I'm too young. And God looks at Jeremiah and says, I don't care, go anyway. So Jeremiah goes, and for many chapters he proclaims this incoming doom which nobody wants to believe. And that brings us to our reading. The first part of our reading is from chapter 18, where Jeremiah is told to go down to the potter's house. And Jeremiah observes a potter working with clay and wheel, and he observes how the potter is able to fashion the clay into something that he likes, and if it's not something he likes, he is able to smash the clay down and rebuild it into something else. It's a simple metaphor, really. God, this is me. That's the New Revised David translation. God says, I am capable of doing this. I am capable of both destruction and I am capable of making something new. I am capable of turning you into what I need you to be, regardless of whether you want to be that thing or not. You'd better listen up, Judah, says God, because I am capable of both working you to destruction and working you to something new. And then we get to chapter 31, where God says, I am promising, I will make a new covenant, karath. I will make a new covenant, not like the old, because the old one, Israel broke left and right. They worshipped other gods. They failed to care for their neighbor to their fullest ability. It will not be like the old covenant. I will make a new says God. Is the hard part for us is that we are not really sure that we want something new. In fact, we're pretty sure we don't want anything new. Things are working right now, and we've just gotten used to them after all. When somebody introduces something new into my life, for example, if somebody tries to teach me a new route of driving to a place I don't know, I tell them, nope, I'm just going to take the way I know, because I get lost all the time. So I don't want to deviate. I don't want to learn the quicker way. I don't want to learn the new way. Just let me do it the way I've always done it. We're kind of like that, right? We'd rather stick with the devil we know rather than the devil we don't. We'd rather keep doing things the way they are, even if the way they are is broken and fundamentally hurtful. So God comes to this people, to Israel, who are pretty sure that life should always continue the way it is and they don't need to change. God comes to them in their ways that are perfectly set and they don't need to be altered in every way. And God says, I promise some creative destruction. I promise that I will make something new out of you. That's the unifying theme in both 18 and 31, that God will make something new out of this clay that is Israel. Now, Israel's not going to like this process. It's not going to be fun for them all the time, but God will make something new, and that new will be life-giving. When God comes to us today and says the same thing, I am making something new out of you. We don't really like it because we're used to the way things are, the old way. But God says, I am making something new out of you. Now, it requires a bit of creative destruction, says God. And do we see this nowhere more fully than on the cross, where new life requires a death first? In order to get to Easter Sunday, you need to go through Good Friday. You need a bit of creative destruction. In my previous church, there was, at one point, all these abandoned houses across the street from the church. The city came in one week and tore them all down, and then they hired the National Guard to come in the next week and tear down even more. The National Guard managed to hit a rotting tree with their big truck and knocked it down, and they apologized to me. And I said, well, do you want to knock down a few more? They're right over there. They didn't take me up on that offer. And everybody always commented on how sad it was that all those homes were being knocked down, never mind that they'd been abandoned for decades at this point and nobody had lived there. People were sad about the destruction that was happening. I can understand that. But then a couple master gardeners got together and got the bright idea that we should lease the lots and turn it into a neighborhood garden. And out of a bit of destruction came something new. And so now that church owns 8 city lots. Yes, it's about half a block. They need a tractor to plant all the crops. Carol will get there. There's an orchard and an outdoor worship space, and it all comes out of a little bit of creative destruction. Knocking down a few homes, some destruction created something new. And so my only question for you is this: what needs to be creatively destroyed in your life? What needs to be creatively destroyed in your life? Perhaps, just perhaps, your repeated encounters with that person you just can't stand is not God's way of mocking you or trying to annoy you. But perhaps it's God's way of doing a little bit of creative destruction and trying to tear down the opinions you just can't stand. Perhaps, just perhaps, the change you see happening, the alterations you see to the world is not the end of the world, although I don't like change any more than you do. But perhaps the change we see around us is God engaging in a creative destruction. Perhaps the changing of morals and the changing of what people think is right and wrong. Perhaps it's not the downfall of Western civilization. Perhaps it's God engaging in a little bit of creative destruction. Not destruction for no reason, but destruction that something new and life-giving may come out of all those changes. God is engaged in creating something new. That newness requires a bit of destruction along the way, but it will lead to new life. Amen.